Good morning, everybody. This is RVN Television, and it is Friday.
Yes, it is.
And it is 10:30 in the morning, which means it's time for
CEO Chat.
our favorite time of the week.
Absolutely.
I'm Al Cini.
I'm Joe Asumendi.
It's such a pleasure working with you.
Always, always.
And I found a good one today.
You did?
I'm really proud of myself. I've known Ira for a while.
Okay.
Ira is an expert in so many things. I can't wait to get the interview started. Ira Wolfe, who is the Chief Googlization Officer of Success Performance Solutions.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I got that right. And I didn't even have to read it off, if anything. It's because we know each other. And you've written a book called Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. We both have a copy.
Yes, we do.
Thank you for this, by the way.
You're welcome.
And you can get this on Amazon.
That's correct.
And it is about a shift that has hit everybody's plan or lack thereof.
And that was the original title, When the Shift Hit Your Plan.
Yeah.
And the origin of the book, I actually did a TED Talk in 2016, and the talk was about change. We talked about VUCA, for those who aren't familiar with it. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Yeah.
It's a term that was started in the 1980s by Warren Bennis, a thought leader in leadership, and then picked up by the U.S. militaries about what our world was going to be like after the Berlin Wall came down.
When it's no longer two superpowers, but everybody's got a place at the table.
Terrorism, hacking,
Sure.
you know, all the things that we're experiencing now. So they anticipated that, and they said, how are we going to defend ourselves against that? We won't get into the politics and the argument how well we're doing with that, but we're going to live in this VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Right.
And I can't think of a better description, a better acronym, a better word that would describe 2020.
That actually perfectly, I think, lays, so we're talking about the fog of war, except it's the fog of business. It's the fog of how we get things done.
Right.
And your specialty in that area, Ira, is recruiting and staffing and making sure the right people are in the right seats, which is a kind of a common phrase.
We actually, as a business, and personally, we actually don't recruit and staff, so I want to get that out.
You're not a
Well, we help companies hire smarter, basically recruit faster, hire smarter, and learn and help companies to how do they better their workforce.
How do they do that?
Yeah, that's ultimately what we do.
And in the second half of the program, we'll talk more about the instruments, because there's a science to it.
There is.
And that's something you know really well. But in this part of the program, you said the first half of this book is about change.
When I wrote the book, again, I had all this research, all this preparation from doing the TED Talk. You know, you only get 18 minutes or less. I think I talked for 13 and a half minutes. And I had all this information to share. And it was like, well, I'm going to update a prior book I did, which was called Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. And that was about the multi-generations in the workforce, Millennials, baby boomers, Gen X.
Right.
But it was also about how technology was influencing each generation. When I went back and I looked at that, I actually didn't talk a whole lot about technology because how fast the world was changing. I wrote that book in 2007, 2008. So we talked about the iPhone had just come out, a smartphone was just developed. But I never mentioned tablets. I never mentioned the cloud. I never mentioned an iPad.
All these things that didn't
And
exist
I went
then.
back and I go, okay, where did I leave off? And I go, wow, I mean, I totally missed it. So I went back and I realized that the iPad didn't come out until 2010. Cloud computing was sort of around. I mean, we've had the internet for a while, but not to the extent that it is now. So I started to talk more about what our world was going to look like, how fast the world was changing, which is overlooked. We talk about technologies, but we don't talk about the stage of adoption and the pace of disruption. During that time. So as I got finished, and I wrote about 130 pages, and we were ready to publish, it was called When the Shift Hits Your Plan. I realized that let's put it in the context of what people were starting to struggle with because we had a booming economy. It continued to grow. It was one of the longest growth spurts we had. And companies were starting to experience a lot of difficulty hiring people. And so I wrote a second half of the book, which was how are companies going to need to hire in the future, and the future was over the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And then just 2 years later, after it was published, we had 2020. And a lot of the things certainly happened, and a lot of the conversation that we've had over the last 12 to 18 months has certainly, is included in the book.
Well, so okay, here we go. There were ripples of technology working their way through industry for years. We saw where that was going. Along came COVID, 2020 happened, and all of a sudden all those ripples stopped and grew into a tsunami. And now we're going into a world where my employees don't live near me anymore. My workers require different things of me. The expectations of, and my complaint is, I can't find people. I just can't find people.
Right. So let's talk about this. Lots
What
to
do
unpack.
what do I need to understand?
Now, Alan Joe, there's a lot to unpack there.
Right.
So the very first thing is that if you think about it, and we're baby boomers, so we can go back of how we applied for a job. At that point, we prepared a resume. We prepared we had to go to the places to fill out applications.
Sure.
We basically read the Sunday newspaper. We got the classified ads to see where the jobs were posted. That was in 60s, 70s. In 50 years, companies still use that same process. It basically post an ad on Indeed, ZipRecruiter, somewhere out there, and wait for people to apply. And there's two generations that's not how they apply to work. The first thing that they do is they evaluate the company. They do research on your company. And now it's so much easier with Google.
Right.
Sure.
That all you have to do is search and you find out what's this company, what's its values, what's its mission, what's its purpose, what are my job opportunities, what are my career opportunities, will they help train me? It's beyond what I just get paid, but
Sure.
there are people that are looking for pay and benefits, but there are a lot of people that are just looking for opportunities. So I want to know what it's like to work there, what's my boss, is there potential to grow? Can I become a leader? Or maybe, what can I learn there and then take away as a transferable skill? And when we grew up, company would say, well, if we're going to invest in training you, we don't want you to leave.
Interesting.
And so, for a good reason. I mean, it's expensive to train people, but you're also creating a loyal employee. So just because somebody leaves for a better opportunity doesn't mean they're still not loyal to your company.
That's true. You don't want them. You
They
don't
may
want them
come back.
Yep.
So instead of these vertical paths that you stay with us and we'll go from department to department to department and give you different titles. The pathway may be I work for this company and then I work for this company, then I come back to this company and I come back to this company because I learn new skills. A little older,
Now I'm
a
a
little
better-
more
now
mature,
I'm a better
little bit
fit
more
for
skilled.
MX.
But companies still have this mindset is that, well, we're going to bring somebody on board. We're not going to train them for 6 months or 12 months. And then if you show that you're worthy and you're a loyal employee, we're going to invest in you.
Interesting.
And by then they're gone
Right.
because they've had more opportunities.
Well, I'd like to talk about employee retention for a second. Because literally now, it's shifted. I think that with the millennials and everything, people aren't looking to stay at a company for 5 or 10 years. They're looking to change every few years. Is that correct?
Interesting. Again, going back to the baby boomers.
Right.
Yeah.
Baby boomers, before they were 28 years old, actually held more jobs than millennials did. So when the millennials, for years, it was like the millennials are job hoppers. By the time they're 28 years old, they held 9 jobs.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, so did,
We don't remember it that way,
so
but that was the way it was.
But so did baby boomers.
Ah,
You know,
okay.
And now it's the same way, but there was also a different dynamic. We had a booming economy when we grew up.
Right.
Now, we had ups and downs, and certainly in the 70s, we had, with the war, and we had the gas crisis, and it was really a disruptive 10 years, a disruptive decade.
Right.
But, so there was reasons to change jobs, but for the millennials when they were growing up, in the 1990s, early 2000s, it was also pretty disruptive. And so companies also had this attitude, again, going back to we're going to hire people and we're not going to train them, and you have to prove yourself. You have to be here 5 years before you get a
Before we
promotion.
do anything for you.
And there were just a lot of opportunities
Really?
out there for people to switch. But also going back to what I was saying is that where we looked is what's the job? How much will I get paid? That's not how the modern candidate looked.
They don't
so
look
there
that
was
way.
there was a misalignment of how people search for jobs. So in the
Right.
past, as I'd read the ad, I'd apply. I had to prepare my resume, where I had to physically go down and fill out an application. And even with the internet, even if you can if you had to fill out applications online, today you can fill out one application, press a button, and it goes to 100
Goes to 100
different jobs.
different.
So there's no commitment from the employee in order to apply for a job. So I'm at work. I'm working for you guys. Having a crappy day. Just found out we're only going to get a 2% raise. I'm going to look around. So I open my computer, pick up my phone,
Everything I need is right there.
apply, send out a resume to 100 places, and then the employers say, we try to reach these people, and they must not want to work because they don't respond to us.
Right.
They're ghosting us. And the reality is psychologically, there was no commitment there. I just was having a bad day. I wanted to see what was out there.
Right.
Where when we applied for a job, we physically had to either type out the resume, get it copied, put it into the mail. I mean, there was an act. We had to sit down and do something, even if it only took an hour.
Right.
We had to do it.
Right.
The other part is just the experience. This is huge, and I touch on this a little bit in the book, and then since the book has been written, we've expanded it more, is the candidate experience is essential. Now, and most companies said, listen, people don't want to work, if they're not willing to fill out the application, we don't want them.
Forget it.
I mean, yeah,
Right.
and so we're going to make the application arduous. We're going to make it long. We're going to make it difficult to fill out. We're going to look for the people who had grit, and really wanted to do this. Well, my question to that is how well is that working out for these companies?
Good question.
and it's not really working out very well. There's a group out there called the Talent Board. And you go to the Talent Board, just do a search for it. They do extensive research. This is the 10th year that they've done it. They interview literally hundreds of thousands of candidates in over 300 companies that applied for the job. And they say, what did you think of the process? Now, this is at the time of the application, so we're not even going to the point before, is what if they go to the application and they can't figure out how to even find it?
Right.
Or it
Right.
takes them an hour to fill out this application, or they can't do it on a mobile phone. So we can dig into that a little bit.
Right.
This is, once somebody applies, what did they think of that? Was the application easy to fill out? Were they contacted right away? If they had a question, were they able to reach HR? What did they? How long did it take once they submitted it till they heard from somebody, till they got interviewed? What was the job offer like?
What did you hear? What did we learn from this?
They measured. They have what they call the candidate resentment rate. Despite technology, despite my book, despite lots of other books that, despite really, really good technology that was billions of dollars, I think it was $4.5 billion was invested in HR technology between 2016 and 2019.
Right.
The candidate resentment rate went up 40%.
Seriously.
And we're not talking dissatisfaction. We're talking, when you say resentment, that means people are
I
angry.
will never come to work for you.
I'm going to tell you,
and I'm going to tell everybody I know.
and now I'm going to put it on social media.
And now all of a sudden, without even hiring the person, you've got a Glassdoor problem.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got somebody out there who will never work for you.
And before the pandemic, if you had a rating 3 stars or lower on Indeed, Glassdoor, Fairy Godboss, there's a whole lot of sites. If you had a 3-star rating or less, there was a 50% or more chance that person would not apply.
Period.
Wow.
So we need to take a break. But the important lesson here is, and we had this conversation a little bit, I want to explore it more. Recruiting is marketing. Recruiting is marketing.
I say it all the time.
Recruiting is marketing. The way you market your company to your customers is probably less important than the way you market it to the people who work for you. Or at least they're equally important. And so we're going to take a break, but we're going to come back with more of Ira Wolfe on this fascinating subject, and a great book, by the way. Thank you, Joe. You want to go out and get a copy of Recruiting in the Age of Globalization by Ira Wolfe, available on Amazon. Back after these messages.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
He's going to want his book back now.
I know, he's going to want his book back. Welcome back, everybody, to CEO Chat. My name is Al.
I'm Joe Asumendi.
We have a terrific guest.
Yes, we do.
Ira
Ira
Wolfe. And he's got a sense of humor, which is very valuable,
On our show.
especially around here. All right, during the break, we had a minute or two to talk about one of my favorite business books, which I take exception to. That's the Collins book that says you got to find the right people for the right seats on your bus, right? That analogy is so screwy to me because, business isn't a bus and people, butts and seats are, I understand what he's trying to say. I get all that. But the modern workplace requires that you inspire a candidate, not just place them.
Right.
I mean, we've gone beyond placement, haven't we? We need to, people buy into your mission. And if you can't articulate what your mission is, they're just not going to buy it.
Yeah, I'll push back with a little bit on the bus because there's two parts of the bus.
Okay.
One is, maybe it's not an example that an organization's not a bus, and you don't have nice rows and defined roles anymore and defined expectations.
Right.
But it is important to hire people that will at least get along with the other people in the bus.
Sure.
And share your value. And the bus is going someplace. And you want people that are that believe in where you're going to be part of that.
To be part of that.
But the other part's interesting, and this is what we talked about in the first part of the story of how things change. Before, you just post a job.
Right.
Here's the job, here's what you're supposed to do, here's how much money you're going to get paid, here's what the benefits are going to be, and here's when you show up for work. Okay, that's the job. And now, what we need to do is tell a story. Yeah, we need to tell a story of why you want to work there. What's it like? Because I don't want to read a job description, which is what 75% of companies copy and paste a job description, which is a legal document. It's just if a company has one. It's just a legal document, and it was approved by your attorney.
Yeah.
That's the marketing piece.
Right.
So if I want to go to buy a TV, what do I read? I go to Amazon, or I go to some site, and I look at what the description is, what are all the features, what are other people saying about it, what worked, what didn't work.
Right.
When I go to get a job, what they post is the directions. They post.
Here's how you
do
get
the
here.
blueprint. Yeah, here's the schematic. Here's what the circuit board looks like.
Oh my God.
They don't talk about what the value would be or how I'm going to benefit from that or what the convenience is. So when you're posting jobs, we need to tell a story. So what you were talking about with the bus is a great story. It may not be exact, but people get it. They can visualize.
They understand what that means.
And they go, yeah, I understand what
it's-
going on a bus and sitting in the right seat and
Right.
being with the people. And last bus I was on, I was with somebody and was pushing and had
Right.
an odor or he was a talker or didn't talk to me, whatever it might be.
Right.
Was so different. People get that. They associate with that. So they understand that. So it might not have been the great model, but it helped people understand what people needed to do. Now, the book's been out 30 years, I think.
It's been around for a while, and things have changed.
People still
There have
haven't
been a
gotten
couple of shifts since then.
People still haven't gotten it.
I know.
I mean, it's interesting. We talked before about going back to normal, and we're not going back to normal.
Right.
Nobody flipped the switch and say, okay, we're going back to 2019 because normal was a perception. Each of us is going to
Has a
experience
different
normal
idea.
differently.
Right.
If you're a people of color, if you're a women in the workplace, why do I want to go back to the way it was? I mean, women. I wrote about this in a couple different books, and I just did this in another interview. In the 1960s, for some of us remember, right? In the 1960s, women needed their husband's permission to get birth control.
Whoa.
They needed their husband's signature to get a loan at a bank. And you couldn't go, and women could not go to an Ivy League school.
Period. That was it. They were not co-ed. They just were not.
Period.
That was it.
You couldn't, and that's just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
So is that the normal? We're talking about
Yeah,
going
we don't
back
want
to,
to.
we're talking about
The
going
good old
back.
days were not all that good. And yeah, we like to,
And even 2019 wasn't
Yeah.
that, we're finding out now, it
Yeah.
wasn't that good for a lot of minorities, for a lot of people in the certain
was
groups
not
in
that
the
good an
city,
experience for them.
socioeconomics. Yeah.
Right.
It was good for some people, but not all people. So our normal, yeah, some people want to go back to what that type of a normal, but not everybody had that same experience of normal, so that's not fair. And we're going to see that change, going forward.
You mentioned the difference in younger people, Gen Z in particular, driving a lot of this change because their values are not their parents' and grandparents' values. Their values are different.
And there's so many little things. If we can talk about recruiting, some of the things that need to change. We remember a dial phone. I remember calling an operator. I lived in a small
I remember calling an operator and saying, the call dropped, I want my money back.
Right.
Yeah. I remember calling the operator to talk to my mother.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we lived in a small coal town in Pennsylvania.
Crank the crank and...
No, we didn't have the
not
crank,
quite that bad.
but we
Yeah,
pick it up and you just said,
Sure.
I'd say, can I talk to my mother?
Yeah.
And they knew who,
Oh,
the
sure, Ira.
switchboard operator knew who it was. Then we got dial, and then we got push button.
Right.
The reality is 96% of every U.S. adult under 30 years old, which is 18 to 30, owns a smartphone. But companies still focus on fill out this application, and they check their website, they check their whole process on a 34-inch screen that's attached to a high-speed internet connection,
Seriously.
an Ethernet cable.
Right.
And who they're trying to recruit? People who have a smartphone,
Right.
a 3 by 5 inch screen that is completely mobile with one bar.
So listen, the shift and the plan are important, and they're all covered in your book, and I think this is great, and you are an expert. It's so great to have you. There's some, and we're going to have you back, by the way. I know you're coming down from Wind Gap, but your clients are everywhere. And I want to talk about what it is you do in Success Performance Solutions a little bit. Identifying who is a good fit for a company, whatever that fit might require, isn't just competency testing, and it isn't just personality testing anymore. There are a number of kinds of questions you can ask to get a good answer. Right? So talk about that.
So when we get a call, again, Success Performance Solutions is based, the core part of our business is based on pre-employment and leadership assessment, and almost anything in between. Now, what does that encompass? Well, we can test for Word and Excel and typing and data entry. That's pretty basic. Those are commodities.
Sure.
We can test for personality fit, but we try to align the personality not as if you're extroverted or introverted, but how does extroversion, introversion impact how you communicate,
Got it.
how you build teams, how you collaborate, how you make decisions. It's different. Extroverts like to talk about it. Introverts like to think through
make
it
a decision
themselves.
and then share it, but it could take a while.
No, exactly
Yeah.
right. So we talk about that. And so we test for that. We test for personality. We use, I know you're familiar with DISC.
DISC,
We
yeah.
use DISC.
MBTI.
We have a values assessment
Right.
that looks at what are people motivated by learning, by money, by growth, by community. What's that? So that's another thing.
Great.
But we look at a lot of leadership skills. Can they vision? And where I've spent I've spent my life thinking about change and talking about shift and other things. But one of the issues that's really important now is how people make decisions. So we look at cognitive abilities, and that gets down to how curious is somebody? Does somebody just read the headlines? Do they just hear it
Do they
over
actually
coffee?
dive in? That's
Or
interesting.
do they ask the questions? Do they do their due diligence? When they're ready to make that decision, how do they evaluate it? Is this too risky, or are they risk tolerant? How emotional do they get? Are they intuitive? I mean, there's a role for intuitiveness, but there's also a role sometimes you have to base your decisions on fact,
On science,
not just gut.
whatever, observation.
How open-minded are you? Do I just hang around with you guys? And I bounce my ideas and I like you because you agree with my ideas? Or do I hang around people who challenge my thoughts, challenge
interesting.
my assumptions. So when we look at evaluating critical thinking, which is a really, really important part. This isn't just for leaders. This is for even teams.
Right.
If you have an open environment and you're looking for people to be creative and you're truly promoting innovation, and innovation comes down to how do we fix diversity and inclusion and equity without being open-minded and innovative.
Think about that.
You know,
Right.
So I mean, it's not just a techie innovation. So we talk about, are they open-minded? What's their risk tolerance? You know, how are they going to evaluate their ideas? Are they more fact-based or intuitive-based? And how open-minded are they to other people's ideas, or even to pursuing those ideas themselves?
Okay.
So we get into that, and then the broader sense, with where I really dug in over the last year and a half, because it became super critical, is how adaptive are people?
I saw that on your website, and I know it's kind of an initiative for you. So definitely.
And the
spend some time on
buzzword for last year, the word of the year by 2 or 3 organizations was resilient. And what does resilient mean? Resilient means bouncing back. Well, it's important. We're going to have setbacks. We're going to have setbacks again. We've had setbacks before. You need people that are resilient, that they're emotionally and psychologically going to bounce back quickly.
Right.
That it doesn't take them years and years and years of support. So resilience is important, no question about it.
Right.
Is it the word of the year? Is it the holy grail of change? Absolutely not. The other word was grit. Right from Angela Duckworth, right over at University of Pennsylvania. Incredible research, great work on that. And grit is about endurance, it's about perseverance, it's about it's having a goal, a long-term goal, and regardless of what challenges are put in front of you, you still see the light at the tunnel. And you still keep going there. So grit is passion and perseverance and bouncing back, and we need those two. Here's what's missing going forward. When you have an accelerating pace of change, when things are changing so fast, just like they did last year and continue to change, we need something we call mental flexibility. It's dealing with paradox. It's what are the assumptions that we hear this, we have our mindset, this has worked in the past, and then we hear a mindset. We hear a new idea, and you go, well, that'll never work. Working from home will never work. Prior to the pandemic, 99% of executives said it will never work.
Right. Wow.
Now, 90% say some form of it.
Some form of it will work.
Yeah, but just in 1 year. So how do we make sense of that? We're also talking about being open-minded, having this growth mindset, and with that, you have to be willingness to make some mistakes. There is no perfect solution. We're going to have to do a little bit of trial and error. And the last one's really interesting. The last skill that we measure was unlearning. And unlearning is
breaking old habits.
Exactly. We keep hearing about learning new habits, but we don't want to let go of the old.
Cool.
And sometimes we got to let go of the old. So we measure grit, resilience, mental flexibility, open-mindedness, and unlearning skills.
What's very interesting is what you're talking about. The days of hiring off a resume is over. Just looking at it, it's basically in the past.
Of doing
right,
that.
it's totally over.
Right.
It should have been over a long time ago.
Yeah, right.
It should have been, if you think about it.
Because even the studies, and there's some studies done in the 80s and 90s, really good studies.
Right.
They looked at the predictability of the things that people did to hire. And a resume was like a 0.1%. And 0.5, by the way, is 50-50.
Seriously.
It basically flipping a coin. An interview, it was less than flipping a coin. The interview, again, which is, again, there's so many biases, there's so many things that the interviewees are now more skilled at interviewing because they've been prepped and they can go online and find out all the questions that are going to be asked, are better than a lot of the hiring managers. But even the interview was like 52% successful. It was essentially, you could have flipped a coin and saved a lot of time and money to be able to do that. When you started to add, when you had a resume, which you need some type of application, different than what it was. You can bring me back, we'll talk about that another time. Interviews, what's the interview look like? But then you also, on top of that, use some type of an assessment. And the assessments actually increase the success rate to about 75% success versus flipping a coin, which is a 50% increase. It's a combination, and when we recommend an assessment, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like them or they're opposed, but the thing we use an assessment for is to help you have a better interview. Because it exposes, if I come in and you're super friendly and seem to be very organized, what the assessment does is that the you that showed up today?
Okay.
Or
is that
what
the real
happens
you?
when you show up after you get the first paycheck?
Good point.
Are you organized? Are you detailed?
Sure.
Are you motivated? What motivates you?
Sure.
What's going to keep you engaged? And so when we use for hiring, not for development, that's a different story, but when
Right.
we use it for hiring, we're exposing what I call vulnerabilities. They're not even weaknesses. It's just, hey, this person may be able to do this, but everybody's got a weak spot. Everybody's got a vulnerability. Everybody's got something they're not really good at. That would be an area to focus on during the interviews, and our assessments actually provide, based on an individual's response, recommended interview questions.
Wow.
So you can
Interesting.
target that interview.
Wow. Oh, we need to wrap this episode up. It's been an incredibly detail-packed 30 minutes, and such a pleasure having you on the program. I do want to, in a second, you're going to tell everybody how to reach you, but here's why you should call this guy. Yes, certainly, there is a science to finding the right people, putting the right people in the right seats on the bus. There's no question about that. Ira is an expert, and Success Performance Solutions offers products and services around that. But I'm also thinking, if you've got a team and you want to make the best of the team you already have, they also have tools that can help in coaching people inside your organization to reach a higher level of performance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This adaptability quotient that we have, the AQAI, actually has a guide. It's actually a guidebook.
How to become
with
adaptable.
exercises of
Right.
how do I improve my grit? How do I improve my resilience? How do I improve my open-mindedness?
And all those things add up to a more productive, more satisfied, more loyal workforce. And Ira, tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, thanks again very much. Success Performance Solutions, that's an easy way. Also, obviously, I'm the Googlization guy, so you can type my name into Google. I will show up in many places, or go to Amazon and you can pick up my book.
And you know, if you need help dealing with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which is something I think we all are dealing with, especially post-COVID, then Ira Wolfe is a guy to get to know.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for joining us today on CEO Chat. Thank you, Ira.
Thank you.
No surprise,
Yeah,
but it was
great.
wonderful having
Great
you here
one.
as a guest. And we'll be back again next Friday. And some future Friday, we'll be back with Ira
Yes.
to pick the conversation up where we left off. Go out and get his book. Don't go out and get it. That's not how you do it anymore. Googlization. Google it. Buy the book.
Right.
If Amazon's doing its job, you already have the book
Right.
because Amazon already knows you need it.
There you go.
That's how good they are. Thanks, everybody.
See you next week. Have a nice week.